All right, so hi, this is Jason with Generate Marketing. One of the services that we provide, and this kind of goes back to my roots, is in addition to the digital marketing services, we do a ton with branding. Again, from a marketing presence, the visual and also messaging and strategic foundation is the essence of how we get a client launched and into a system that allows them to generate leads. So, but at the end of the day, the ABCs is we've got to have a good logo to be able to establish the overarching visual language that we then incorporate and insert in a variety of capacities, whether it's a rack card, business card, uh, the banners on YouTube and Facebook and Google Places, as well as in on video slides. So again, um, this is something that we evaluate, and this is something in particular that I do and help facilitate as we work with our clients. So it's a very common service. I thought I'd go ahead and just show a particular logo that I've been working on and kind of showing the examples of some of the concepts and kind of what I've been working through. So the client that we're working with is Alter Construction Group. Now, the gentleman happens to have a faith-based value system component. So he's playing off of the word of altar, not so much ALTER, but ALTAR. So from that capacity, I've been playing with two different exploration directions. One that is more of a typographic treatment that is a little bit more implicit, not as much necessarily a direct correlation to a particular um, item per se, but more a playoff using the cross in a negative space within the T. So for some, they're going to see it right away. For others, they may not see it. So it is kind of that dual perception that, again, from our perspective, the logos that obviously, or in many cases, tend to be a little bit more simple, tend to have a longer shelf life. In addition to that, um, our job, in developing and designing brands and logos and identity systems is to make sure it's versatile, whether it's good in one color, two color, full color. It looks good on swag, whether it's thumb drives, pens, hats, shirts. So again, we try to look at the all-encompassing application of it. Um, and again, I think that's probably where we differentiate compared to just going online and having somebody do a logo for 99 bucks is they don't necessarily always tend to look at it from the strategic application, because again, if you're going to do vehicle wraps, if you're going to do things like that and banners, you don't want to have to reprint that stuff. That's really expensive. So it's kind of we want to do it once and do it right the first time around. The secondary consideration, which on this particular logo, I'm starting with a very basic, but the um, the consideration and the use of color is just as important as the icon and the visual treatment itself. We always talk about, and my old professor used to always challenge us, is that we want to get outside the box of 16 crayons. A lot of people just associate it with just sort of the true kind of rainbow colors, and there is such nuance and such opportunity to be able to create a really dynamic palette that speaks to kind of the feel of the company and just kind of the culture itself. One of the things that's happened over the last 20 years is color and full color printing has become dramatically less expensive. So what used to be more of, hey, we could do a logo in one or two colors only. Again, we look at a comprehensive palette. We may not use some of the colors as much, but still we tend to try to have a 4 or 5 color palette when it's all said and done, from that standpoint. So again, thought I'd kind of show you sort of how I began. So in this particular case, I've come up with 6 different concepts, variations of 2 or 3 of them where I kind of started. So it is an organic process. I think one of the things we tell and advise our clients is, of all the services we provide, logos tend to be the most emotional project experience. It tends to evoke the personal, like the essence of what the business and business owner is trying to accomplish. So ultimately, opinions are a big, big part of this. Our job is here to guide the client along a process of both the consideration of what they want and then also applying possible ideas or scenarios of maybe things they have not thought of. At the end of the day, our job is to obviously make sure that the logo reflects who they are. Um, it isn't about us, it's ultimately about the client. So the facilitation and the guidance, again, is I think something we excel at, and we consider that just as an important part of the process. We also remind clients that, hey, you know what? There's multiple solutions to this problem. It's not like there's one particular answer. So it's not uncommon that clients can go through periods of indecisiveness. But again, each journey is different. And, from the hundreds of logos that I've designed and helped been a part of, that's our job, is to guide you through that journey and ultimately come up with a destination and a mark that they're ultimately pleased with. So to begin with, I started with a really simple basic treatment. Again, this was playing off of the T, again, using the size where it's a little bit larger than the font. In this particular case, it alludes to the cross. That again is a part or kind of an aspect to the core values that Tim and his priorities are about. Again, one of the other things I'm a big advocate of, and there's obviously times where we'll use more trendy, more kind of creative type fonts. I tend to really rely on timeless font usage. Font systems that tend to have an entire family, different weights, different sizes. So things like Helvetica, Gill Sans are some of my favorites. Garamond on the serif type, Futura, to name a few. I've used Proxima Nova for many instances. So again, I would say if I was to probably say my favorite is Helvetica, and the reason being is it's been around for 70 years. It does not go out of style. So again, I think from our perspective, many cases the sans serif fonts evoke a position of strength, of boldness. Again, depending upon the weight, it can be condensed, it can be extended. So here we're using a very standardized kind of Roman 55 font weight and type of Helvetica. So again, the idea again that we can use and pull this cross-like T out of the icon or out of the logo and do it independently. We've got construction group in a secondary capacity. We can remove that. So again, this is one just looking at it more of a compact, but this can operate in a vertical capacity as well as a horizontal capacity. Now, as I continued this process, I started again taking and messing with the T and playing with the utilization in terms of its alignment. In this case, it's within the framework where it aligns with the top and the bottom of the typeface. Again, the weight of the T is more similar and consistent. So again, you could look at this as just a lowercase t. It doesn't necessarily, it is not over the top from a cross utilization. So again, it's kind of depends upon what the client is looking for. Again, went a little further. This one was a little bit out there. From my personal standpoint, it's probably not my favorite, but I looked at the application of, in this case, some type treatments in letters where they already had the negative spaces. I went and altered them significantly to have that. So again, just giving a buffet of different options, but in my personal opinion, this is probably not one of my favorites. This particular one is probably one where I feel is stronger. Again, we've switched here to using Gill Sans. I've used a heavier weight here. I've used the T exactly that is consistent with the font type. We're not altering it, and we're really just playing with some negative space. So again, I like the fact that this has, as we mentioned, an implicit call out to the cross, but it has kind of this visual shout out. In this particular case, I'm using a colorized treatment. Tim was a big fan of kind of the red and black, which in Nebraska is used all the time. I tend to try evolve that as I've discussed. So in this case, it's a little more of a brick red kind of off, not necessarily the true Husker red as we call it. And then I'm a big fan of charcoal and slate gray. Now, based on this, I will add and complement additional colors to this palette. But again, this kind of gives them an idea of how this will look with and without color. So again, if we do this and we show the black and white, this again is looking at it so it looks both. solid as well as with it in color. So again, from one of these perspectives, this is probably one that I'm a fan of. Now, if we go over here, you can see how I applied this to a shirt. And again, having the T as a call out to the red, you could do this all in white, you could do it in black, but this kind of shows that. And then this one, we'll get to the right one here. This is an example of just using that T treatment as an icon. Again, just trying to help the client see how this could be applied and not just here's a logo, but here how it could be used in other aspects. And again, in some cases too, we'll mock up treatments for vehicle wraps. We work with vendors that do a great job of that. So again, in some cases, we're mocking up signage that may be on a brick and mortar. So again, the whole idea is that we got to make sure that this is versatile across the board. Now, as we continue down, or I continue down the progression, one of the directions I led, or I went towards this way, was the idea of the altar itself. Again, a little bit more explicit, may or may not necessarily be something that people recognize, but I played with the different types in terms of its widths. Obviously, we do have a cross within that, so it is a little bit more explicit, like we mentioned. Not a right or wrong, but this one is maybe not as abstract versus the other one that plays purely with negative space. And as you can see, here's one where I played again with the horizontal and vertical treatment just to show this. I would say of the altar ones, this is one that I'm fairly comfortable with recommending. This one again goes more from a longer horizontal capacity, having more of a table-like feel to it. Again, showing some more here as it relates to the size of top and bottom. Again, this is one, like I said, where I then applied the color treatment to it, and then ultimately then showed how this would potentially look on a ball cap as well. And then I think of the final ones, I believe actually the shirt, or excuse me, the ball cap was this one. So this one is the narrowest one of the ones that I chose. Again, this is all using Gill Sans. The initial logos were of the ones with the cross-like negative space that used Helvetica. So again, some cases I might do 3, 4, 5. I mean, it's kind of whatever I come up with. It's a journey. Like I said, in rare instances, we may hit one right on the mark and hit it out of the ballpark in the first try. But generally speaking, it's usually a starting point where we evolve it from there. So again, that kind of gives, for those that are unfamiliar or have not been through the concept of having a logo designed, this again sort of speaks to that. And then again, from here, then we sit down with the client and I help them kind of go through and, guide them on, their feedback, and from there ultimately come up with something they're pleased with.